San Francisco. I'm Ben Kaplan, and this is the podcast where we define who we are and who we want to be.
We are diverse.
We are innovative.
We are inclusive.
We are change makers.
Problem solvers.
Activists.
Leaders.
Citizens.
We are open-minded.
Optimistic.
There's hope for a better tomorrow. And you got to give them hope.
This is the podcast that's more than a podcast.
San Francisco, they are the world champion.
We are San Francisco. Hey, San Francisco. Today we're chatting with Mark Farrell, who served as the 44th mayor of San Francisco back in 2018 after the passing of Ed Lee. Previously, he served 7 years on the San Francisco Board of Supervisors representing District 2, which includes the Marina and Cow Hollow. And now he's one of the leading candidates to become the next mayor of San Francisco in November's election. Mark, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Well, first of all, take us through the circumstances by which you became mayor were a little interesting. Yeah. Obviously, there was an interim mayor who's our current mayor now, London Breed. There was some tension at the time about should she be allowed to become the mayor when she was clearly running in that election in 2018. Right. What was the circumstances where you became the consensus choice to become the 44th mayor?
Sure. Great question. Boy, it takes me back, obviously, a little bit of time here. Ed Lee passed away in December of 2017. And I think that was a really hard time for San Francisco, certainly as a whole. But I will say people in elected office, I will say for my family in particular, we were very close with Ed, Mayor Lee, and my children were as well. He is someone I'd worked with closely inside of City Hall, I would say political allies for the most part. And so it was a tough period of time. And, given the circumstances, as you mentioned, then board president London Breed became the acting mayor of San Francisco right immediately upon his death. And there was a short period of time, a window where people had to decide whether they wanted to run for mayor during the next election. And that happened to be summer of 2018 was the election. We decided, my wife and I and our family decided that wasn't the right time for us, mainly because of our children. At the time.
How old were they at the time?
Yeah, they were 5, 10, and 12 at the time. And to know me, I'm a dad first. I simply love spending time with my children, and we're blessed with a great family. And so we decided against running for mayor. And at that time, once all the candidates were declared, and that was sometime in early January.
Suddenly the people who weren't running for mayor were viable to become the mayor during this interim time. Is that because no one would have an advantage in that election by holding the office? Yeah,
I think that was generally the kind of aura that was happening inside of City Hall. And, London Breed was the acting mayor at the time. So that could have continued. But there was a majority of the members of the Board of Supervisors that didn't want that to happen. And so I was elected by my colleagues and then was sworn in that night on January 23rd of 2018 as the 44th mayor of San Francisco.
And why do you think you were selected, or why were you an acceptable choice for the majority of the board that felt like other people were not an acceptable choice?
Yeah, I think for two principal reasons. One, which many people fit into this category, I wasn't running for mayor. And so there was no conflicts, if you will. No one would have a stated advantage in that election or during that campaigning period. But I think more than anything, it was because I'd worked very closely with all of my colleagues on the Board of Supervisors during my time in office. Folks that I agreed with a lot of the time, as well as folks that I didn't agree with. I spent a majority of my time working across the aisle with people I didn't agree with philosophically a lot of the time on a lot of different issues. But, we worked really hard in our relationships to forge ways and forge legislation where we could work together. And we, whether it be the budget, when I was the budget chair for 4 years and ended up being the longest serving budget chair in our city's history, partnered with my colleagues on the progressive left to pass those budgets every single year, unanimous votes with little controversy at the end. Working on those relationships and being someone who was able to work across the aisle with people, from every single district in San Francisco, I think really created that ability for my colleagues to trust me with being mayor for the 6 months term, if you will.
Well, and obviously you're running for mayor now, you're in the thick of the campaign. Do you ever think back to 2018, given what's happened to San Francisco, and wish you would have thrown your hat in the ring then? Do you have any regrets about not getting in the race back then?
No regrets at all. Again, I'm a family person first, and we did it. My wife and I decided not to run, and I decided not to run for mayor because of our children. I will never regret that. I love spending all the time I can with our children. And again, we are blessed with an amazing family, both children, my parents, mother, who unfortunately recently passed away, but our extended family as well is really incredible and source of great support and where we find joy in our lives. However, I am running for mayor right now because since being in office, I have watched our city crumble over the last 5.5 years. I believe in our city. I believe in everything that we have going for us. The universities that we have, both USF, where I know we're about a block away from today, but also Stanford and Berkeley and the surrounding neighborhoods.
City College of San Francisco as well. Yes.
City College, as you mentioned as well, and certainly other JUCOs around the neighborhood in the Bay Area. But more than anything, the people of San Francisco. We are an amazing group. We share this ethos of San Francisco. I think that is truly unique around the country and certainly around the world. But at the end of the day, we've really watched our city deteriorate over the last 5 years. So I think it's going to take a change of leadership to bring it back. But we have everything going for us, and I simply believe in the future of our city, and that's why I'm running for mayor.
A lot of the candidates for mayor will say a change is needed. One of the things what I've asked about your candidacy, that there'll be a bit of a critique from the other candidates.
Sure.
So take it with a grain of salt.
I do.
But they'll say, where has Mark Farrell been the past 5 years? We've been in the trenches doing things, getting things done. They say, what has he been doing for the past 5 years? He hasn't been in the trenches with us. What is your response to that?
I've been focused on my family, plain and simple, and I will never apologize for that. That's why I left City Hall. I've been blessed with a private sector career where I've worked hard. I'm used to 80, 100-hour weeks. That's what I've done to build my career up, and I have focused on my private sector career to support my family, focus on my children, and to be quite frank with you, for the past 5 years, and particularly the last 3 years, focus on my parents' health as well. They've been in declining health. Again, my mother passed away, unfortunately, in January, and I don't regret a second of time that I've spent with her over the last 3 years, almost every single day at the house. And it's plain and simply something that I decided to do proactively. Would never apologize for that. At the same point in time, I've still been a resident of San Francisco. We've been here focused on our children, and during COVID, getting them through school and making sure their mental health was okay. And now, though, as we look at the city of San Francisco post-COVID and where we've gone and the direction we've slipped, to me, it's about time for a change of leadership and someone who has experience and can get the job done.
And was it difficult to get the political wheels turning again? I don't know if you expected to be back in politics at some point or not. And maybe sometimes people underestimate a little bit. I've spoken to a lot of people running for office now, and there's a lot of things you have to do. And if you haven't done it in a while, maybe it's harder to get that going. And was it difficult? Did it take a bit, or did you expect to come back to politics at some point?
Well, when I left office in 2018, I never thought I would run for political office again. To me, I left City Hall with a huge smile on my face. One, because we were leaving for our children, and that's what's most important to me in life. But more than anything, I was very proud of what we had accomplished when I was in City Hall. When I was a member of the Board of Supervisors and budget chair and then became mayor, we had grown our police department to record staffing levels. We had, when I was mayor, cleared out all the large tenant encampments in San Francisco, and we invested in our local economy. Our city was simply in a much different, much better place than it is today. We talk all the time, and people come up to me all the time here in San Francisco and say, when I used to travel and say I was from San Francisco, that was met with a sense of awe and envy. And now people say you're from San Francisco.
They're saying oh, are you doing okay?
Exactly.
How are things?
All that
which is
stuff.
annoying, which is very annoying. Yes,
it is. But it doesn't have to be that way. That doesn't have to be our future. Again, I believe it's going to take a change of leadership. It's going to take someone with experience and a strong vision for our city, willing to be held accountable. That's not the type of leadership we have in City Hall right now, and that's why I'm excited to run for office again this time. It wasn't part of my game plan. Ask me a year ago, I would have thought you were crazy. But now that I'm doing it, and now as a family, we proactively decided to do this, I couldn't be more excited and more energized than ever before.
Well, and two things, when you declared your candidacy for mayor again, two things stood out to me about the video, the announcement. The first thing was you said, oh, I'm ready to hit the ground running on day one. I've been mayor before, albeit in a limited capacity. So what do you take from that 6 months as mayor, and what do you not take from it? Meaning you held the office, you did mayoral duties, but it's a little bit different because you don't have the full power because people know your term is going to expire. So they don't have to work with you maybe as much as they otherwise would. So what do you sort of take and what do you not take from that experience?
That's a great question. The honest answer was I was mayor for 6 months, fully sworn in as the 44th mayor of San Francisco. So there were a lot of things we were able to accomplish during those 6 months. But of course, long-term projects, we would have never been able to see to fruition or see them through, if you will. And so that's the honest reality. And we knew that going in. And I knew that going in as mayor. A few lessons learned. Number one, the actual power of the mayor's office is huge here in San Francisco. The mayor ultimately controls over 99% of the budget inside of City Hall. Spending the time running those mayoral departments, it is complicated work. It takes an extreme amount of engagement. I talk about often, it was the nirvana period of time with our children where all 3 kids were at the same school for a 2-year period, given their age differences. And so we had 1 drop off and 1 pickup. And if you're a parent,
I have 2 kids. They're little. I have 2 drop offs now. Next year it becomes 1. So I hear you. I'm excited.
Every parent knows exactly what I'm talking about and how important or how cool that is when that's only 1 drop off or pickup. So I had 1 drop off and I was at my desk at 8:15 every morning. We cranked all day long. I was the one that had lunch brought in most of the time, cranked during the day with teams, department heads, laying out policies, vision, implementing that, talking with not just department heads, but department staff underneath that, and holding people accountable. That's a lot of work, but also you saw the power of what could get done when you work together with department heads, when everyone's rowing on the same oar in a direction of the city that you believe in, and as mayor that you're articulating that vision for. So the power of the mayor's office was something that's became very relevant, and also very. It was very evident how powerful the mayor's office was. As a supervisor, that, but to be in the mayor's shoes and to actually see that witness firsthand and to actually lead that charge as mayor of San Francisco. Part of the reason when I hear these excuses coming out of City Hall right now, the mayor can't do anything, the board of supervisors is stymieing me, or commission is stymieing me, or this individual is stymieing me. You know what, as mayor, you are incredibly powerful here in San Francisco. You have to use it in the right way. You have to be engaged. You have to lead. I think we're missing that in City Hall right now. I don't believe any of those excuses. And that to me is why we need a strong mayor of San Francisco going forward. Someone who's not only going to change the direction of the city of San Francisco, but someone who has experience having done that before and can start hitting their ground running on day one, just as you mentioned.
What's notable about the powers of the mayor that I find interesting is that it's an underrated power to sort of set forth the budget. I mean, obviously people know that there has to be agreement with the board of supervisors, but there's nothing that really says what is the entire process that leads up to that submission of the budget. The mayor can do whatever he or she would like to do. Do you think that the budget process needs to be looked at again? What I mean by that is I don't know a single person who's like, wow, our budget is so well spent. We are accounting for every last dollar. What a great budget we have. I don't care what side you're on. No one says that.
Yep.
Do we need to relook at, because that's one thing the mayor can kind of absolutely control, which is the process that leads to the submission of the budget.
Yeah, I think it's both a process question, but I think more than that, it's just plain and simple leadership and decision making within the budget itself. The budget process is essentially a year-round process in City Hall, obviously culminates at the end of the summer. There are defined periods of time right now when the mayor submits the budget to the board of supervisors, the time where the board of supervisors, and I know this very well, having been budget chair for 4 years, again, the longest serving budget chair in city's history, having digested that budget with our budget and legislative analyst at the board of supervisors, and then coming to a compromise with the mayor's office. Sure, that budget process needs to get looked at in a very major way. Certainly along timelines a little bit, but I think more than anything, right, we need to think about holistically looking at third party or nonprofit contracting out of City Hall. We don't analyze that separately as much as we need to, for instance.
And this notion of, to me, it's set up as an incremental budget where you have a budget, you basically what the process is, you look at last year's budget, you say, okay, I got a few different priorities. I'm going to tweak things. Oh, we're concerned about, public safety and crime. We're going to tweak that a bit. We're going to tweak this about. But that assumes incremental budgeting, as you know from the private sector, is great when you have a budget you like and you just need to adjust and tweak. But there's something else called zero-based budgeting, which means let's start from scratch because we don't have confidence in where we're at. We don't need incremental change. We need to reset our priorities. And my concern is that I feel like San Francisco does not have a clear plan of recovery. We don't know what that plan is. So as a result, the budget is the plan. So do you think we need incremental change, or do you think we need an overhaul of that budget?
The complete overhaul. Look, I've said from the day I launched my campaign, you mentioned the term zero-based budgeting. That's a term that resonates incredibly well with me. We've talked about it a lot. Look, we need a complete overhaul of what we're spending our money on inside of City Hall. To your point about recovery, and to your point about the budget reflecting values, I said this every single day I was in City Hall. The budget is your policy document. Where you spend money as a city government, where you agree, where you vote to spend money as a city government, whether you're on the board of supervisor, whether you're mayor, it is your policy document. And to me, what we're spending money on and how ineffectively we're spending that money right now is off the charts. And to me, we need to get back to basics. Again, my campaign is, I talk often about public safety, about the cleaning up the street conditions of our city and investing in our local economy again. I just came from a meeting with a number of small business owners in the city, heads of different merchant groups along some of our very prolific merchant corridors here in San Francisco. The frustration from them about City Hall is off the charts, something I've never heard before. And we need to take a completely different approach in City Hall. And that's why, to me, and I'm biased when I say this, but having a mayor come in with a finance background is going to matter more over the next 4 years than in any other period in our city's history. We're facing these budget deficits, not just the 1 and 2 year budget deficits, but the projected $1.5 billion budget deficit in 5 years. To me, having somebody come in with a clear vision of what he or she will fund, be willing to be held accountable, and fund it through the budget is going to be a priority. It's going to take someone to overhaul the budget process, but overhaul where we spend our capital, and again, bring San Francisco back.
Are you concerned about corruption in this process in addition to government waste? Just because I don't know of another organization that has 35,000 plus employees where suddenly almost 40% of the budget, if you look at the discretionary amount of the budget that we have discretion to choose every year, almost 40% gets outsourced to third-party providers, a lot of nonprofits, the so-called nonprofit industrial complex. I don't know another, let's say, company that is that big or organization that's that big that outsources so much of the basic duties. Is that an area for concern? Should we be outsourcing that much of core city functions, some of the priority areas you mentioned?
The short answer is no. Right? We're outsourcing way too much to nonprofits here in San Francisco. I want to take a moment to say, though, not all nonprofits are created equal, meaning there are some nonprofits, in my view, that do amazing work here in San Francisco. I believe we need to support them, probably give them additional resources to do what they're doing, those that are having a real impact. But at the end of the day, how we allocate the resources in San Francisco, it will blow people's minds to know that there are over 250 nonprofits in San Francisco that get funding for homeless services in our city. Over 250 individual organizations. On its face, that doesn't make a lot of sense. There are also 9 different city agencies that fund homeless services to nonprofits here in San Francisco. Multiple instances, 6 city agencies fund the same nonprofit. How does that make any sense at all from a city perspective? So we need to do it differently. We need to do it better. We need to be smarter about it. Again, I believe some nonprofits do great work here in San Francisco. We need to support them, but how we handle it inside of City Hall, the fact that we don't separately look at all the nonprofit and third-party contracts as a separate part of our budget process is insane to me.
Well, which essentially, not only are you outsourcing things, but then you're outsourcing it where it's actually beyond the purview of certain government metrics, scorecards, everything else. So we're like setting it aside and also making it less transparent, less easy to track, less results based while we're doing it. And at the same time, if you do this and you have some bad apples, all the news about, kind of nonprofit corruption or misuse of money, to your point, it gives a bad name to the nonprofits doing great work, the nonprofits that we need to help us get back because we sort of lost control of this process.
That's a great point. And look, corruption in any city department through any third-party contracts that we give, it should be everyone needs to be held 100% accountable. And we have to be very strong about that as a city government. Obviously, multiple instances have crept up over the last few years. That's something the next mayor is going to have to be incredibly strong on and make sure that that doesn't exist. But again, that to me comes from leadership inside of City Hall. It starts and stops with leadership out of the mayor's office, right? Having a mayor say to his or her department heads and to their underlying team saying, this will not be tolerated. When this happens, these people will not only be held accountable, but we are going to see structural changes inside of City Hall. And certainly as we think about the amount and the vast amount of dollars that are going to third-party contracting here in San Francisco, it lends itself to a situation where we're going to have more issues. And that to me is another reason why we need to take a hard look.
Hi, I'm Ben Kaplan, a passionate advocate for City College of San Francisco, and I'm running for the Board of Trustees. Our college is key to solving our city's toughest challenges, from creating essential worker pipelines to achieving financial security and reigniting enrollments. But we need your help. Donate now to support free tuition and transform City College into a model of educational opportunity. Join us in making a difference. Visit votebenkaplan.com to find out more. Now back to the show.
The last issue on the budget is, what is your response to those who say, like, okay, I agree with Mark on everything he said, but we need an outsider that doesn't have all of these entangled alliances? What is your response to that about saying that, hey, there's plenty of good people in San Francisco government, there's a lot, but the system sort of, these alliances are entangled, sort of protect the status quo, where the money goes. Even with good intentions, it's going to be difficult to change that. What is your response?
I couldn't disagree more. At the end of the day, it depends on the elected official and the person running for office. To me, having experience inside of City Hall, having been budget chair for 4 years, having been mayor before, is a positive when you talk about thinking of the next mayor of San Francisco, who he or she will be. Look, at the end of the day, you're running a $14+ billion budget with over 35,000 employees, with over 50 different mayoral departments. Do you really think, does any voter really think someone's going to come in and learn on the job and just figure that out? To me, experience matters in a great deal, but it's also the right experience. When I was in office before, I fought for public safety. We grew our police department to record staffing levels. When I was mayor, we took out all of the large tenant encampments in San Francisco. And the Coalition on Homelessness that's controlling a lot of the dialogue in San Francisco right now around third-party contracting within our homeless complex, they were protesting in front of my house. And I invested in our local economy. When I left office, our economy was humming as a city of San Francisco. We did so much around small businesses, around the tech industry. To me, that's the type of mayor that we need. Someone with a track record of focusing on the issues that matter. And also somebody who is willing to lay out a strong vision for a city and fund it through the budget process. No one who's beholden. Somebody who's actually going to be a leader and does not care about all of these special interest groups that are circling around City Hall right now. That's why I'm running for mayor, because that's the leader I'm going to be. One
of the areas that you talk about as a priority area, obviously, is crime and public safety. It's one of your top 3 areas, along with, I think, the condition of city streets and local economy. When you announced your candidacy, you did some things that probably people would perceive as maybe a little bit more, I guess the word would be, you got this moderate progressive divide, but a little bit more to the right of things. A couple of them. One would be, you said, a zero tolerance policy on crime. 2, you said on day 1, you would fire Police Chief Scott. So talk about, do you feel like those 2 things you highlighted, are those necessary for our recovery? Do you feel like we won't recover if those 2 things don't happen? And what is zero tolerance? What does that mean on crime?
The short answer is yes. I have gone to great pains to say Chief Scott is a very good man. The average tenure, though, of a police chief in the U.S. is 3 years. He's been here for close to 8. I believe we need to thank him for his service, and we need to bring in a police chief that will inspire the rank and file within our police department. Right now we have a police department that's not only significantly depleted. When I left office, we had over 2,300 officers. We're down over 600 officers since I left. We need somebody who's going to re-energize our police department, fight with the next mayor to increase the budget of our police department, to increase staffing levels of our police department. That's just a new chief, and I believe that very strongly. That, to me, is not a progressive or moderate stance. That's just a leadership stance.
Well, and I think what's interesting is really Police Chief Scott was brought in really to clean up the issue, as you know, which was maybe the excessive use of force, other problems within the department. He was meant to be sort of an agent of change for that. We've asked him more recently to be an agent of change of something different, which is a recruiter, police staffing. We've asked him to also be someone who sort of builds up the morale of the police department, which was depleted over the past few years, certainly. Do you think he just doesn't have the right skills to do those kind of tasks? Or do you think that, hey, it's kind of run its course, he's been here 8 years and we just need to move on, we just need something fresh?
I think it's the latter. Again, he's done a really good job implementing the reforms that he was brought here to do. And I think we need to thank him for his service, but we need to move on. We need someone from inside the police department, inside SFPD, who's come through the ranks that will inspire the rank and file here in San Francisco within our police department, but also, again, a police chief that will fight for increased budget dollars, fight for recruiting, fight for increased staffing, and make sure that we once again get to a place, and to your second question around a zero tolerance approach to crime, there need to be consequences for criminal activity here in San Francisco. It's part of civil society in our country, around the world. There have to be consequences for crime. And if there are not, we get what we get here in San Francisco. It was a few years ago was the videos from Union Square around the big smash and grabs. If we're being honest, those are the videos that start to really crush our reputation as a city, both nationally and abroad, as San Francisco. But it's all the way down to what I talk about all the time. The neighborhood Walgreens and CVS's in San Francisco are getting looted, if not daily, on an every other day basis in every single neighborhood that I visit. And to me, that's simply unacceptable. It is really challenging for people who are shopping in these stores to actually witness theft right in front of their own eyes on a daily basis. It is so hard for the people working at these stores where they feel helpless, they feel vulnerable, to actually stop people from stealing at the end of the day. And as another elected official in the Bay Area mentioned, we should be locking up criminals, not shampoo bottles in our stores. And to me, we've gone so far away from the concept of having law and order here in San Francisco, having consequences for crime. We need to get back to that as a city, because public safety is an issue that affects everybody. It affects everybody across every single income level, across every single neighborhood. I think about what's happened to the Tenderloin in particular. Think about the neighborhood. It's public safety and the drug crisis that have really hit that neighborhood harder than ever over the last few years. But a neighborhood with the highest percentage of families here in San Francisco. I think we're raising our 3 children in the city. Public safety should be table stakes for an environment and a great city where you can raise your children. That doesn't exist today, and that's why it has to be the real focus of the next mayor of our city.
Well, I think that the police staffing issue is an interesting one, because I think Brooke Jenkins was on the show, and one of the things she emphasized that was interesting to me was a lot of people think with police staffing, there's going to be police like chasing down criminals, which of course is the case, right? There's more police there to respond. But she was really emphasizing that she felt like adequate police is a deterrent, because when you see it in the area, you can prevent crimes from happening. If you just feel like there aren't police around, there's no consequences for what's going to happen, then it emboldens criminals. So she was really emphasizing police to prevent crime as opposed to just respond when crime happens.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's a little bit of both, right? But the deterrent effect is real. If you know there are consequences to your crimes, it might deter you from doing them going forward. Here in San Francisco, and we simply, unfortunately, developed a reputation as a city over the past few years where people can come in, or people who are from San Francisco, and commit these crimes and get away with it with no consequences. And that's a problem. That's simply a problem for our city as a whole. It's a problem for families. As a parent, it's a problem. For children, it's a problem. For our elderly, it's a problem. That's why, to me, again, this is an issue that affects every single person in San Francisco, no matter your walk of life.
Want to join our movement to get San Francisco back on track? Attend a We Town Hall event or stop by our popular We Happy Hour meetups. Better yet, join our data team, take the census, or help us audit the city budget. To join the movement, text us at 415-301-6700. That's 415-301-6700. Or learn more at wesanfrancisco.org.
One thing on police staffing that sometimes doesn't get talked about is, where do the new police officers come from? Governor Newsom signed a bill, AB 89, in the state legislature that said, we're going to raise the bar on what's required to be a police officer. Namely, we're going to raise the age, and we're going to require either an associate's degree in modern policing or a bachelor's degree. That's coming in 2025. And that was a lot of it was response, and rightly so, to George Floyd and concerns about having mature police officers in those instances that require nuance to navigate those. But that's coming, and I don't hear people talking a lot about, well, how do we have a pipeline of police officers that we're going to grow in our city? And, you know, there's a bill to require this modern policing associate's degree. Why aren't we at City College recruiting more people, saying, hey, you can make a great contribution to your city? And by the way, it's a well-paying job in San Francisco. Why don't we grow more police officers locally? Why are we so focused on we've got to pull them and beat out Alameda that's offering a $75,000 signing bonus? Why don't we grow them here?
I couldn't agree with you more. You know, I've talked to members in our police department, in our fire department, sheriff's departments, and their union membership as well. Why are we not in our high schools talking through, hey, these are careers here in San Francisco, you know, that are valuable, where you're serving the city of San Francisco in your own capacity and so forth. And maybe it's something you can't recruit from directly out of high school, but you say, hey, you know what, you can go to City College, get your associate's degree, and then come into the department. That's something we need to be proactively doing in a very major way here in San Francisco that we're simply not doing today. You know, but you talk about staffing. I just want to address it real quick, because I think you have to get granular and you have to understand how this is going to work. At the end of the day, I think there are two measures. I think of them more as stopgap measures that are going to immediately start to fill the ranks on the short term while we get to how we really ultimately increase police staffing for the long haul. One is a drop program that we've been talking about for months on the campaign. Very excited. Supervisor Dorsey has introduced this to the Board of Supervisors. Hopefully it'll be on the November ballot, where we actually allow police officers that could otherwise retire to stay on the police force for up to an additional 5 years here in San Francisco without affecting their pension. They'll still get fully paid so long as they're out on patrol in the district neighborhoods. That to me can have a really dramatic, immediate effect over the next few years here in San Francisco. So I think that's a great thing. We have to also focus, you alluded to, lateral rehiring here in San Francisco. Alameda County over 2 years offers a $75,000 signing bonus. Look, I don't think that's the right approach for here in the city of San Francisco, because on the downside, you can create a mercenary workforce, and that's not what we want to create here in San Francisco. But at the end of the day, $75,000 for one recruit in Alameda, our entire recruiting budget for the city of San Francisco's police department has been $250,000 a year. I mean, it's a joke. We're not even thinking about competing, whether you think about housing subsidies or other things that we can offer folks to come to the city of San Francisco as a police officer. We need to be aggressive. But ultimately, this is coming down to our police academy ourselves here in San Francisco. You know, when I was budget chair for 4 years, and then after Mayor Lee passed away when I was mayor, those are 5 contiguous years. We averaged 5 police academy classes a year during that time, with over 50 recruits per class. Literally, we were turning people away from our police academy. Since I've left office, this current mayor has averaged 3 police academy classes, and the last one had 19 recruits. One academy class had less than 10 recruits last year. It's a joke how we've gone about it and simply lost focus. And at the same point in time, believe it or not, we have over 600 people that have applied to the police department that are in background check backlog. I've asked everybody involved, everybody within our police department, union membership, representation, and so forth, hey, when I come into office, how about if we outsource all of those background checks? We can get people through those background checks in 3 months and fully staff or fully flood our police academy once again for the next few years. Everyone's in support of that. Everybody just wants more officers on the street.
Police is a great example of it, but I think other areas where we just have shortages of critical workers include, we need mental health counselors, drug treatment counselors, 911 operators, firefighters, all of these things. And to me, I think back and I think, well, you know, City College, the reason I'm big on that now is because it was founded in 1935 to have a pipeline of critical workers for a changing city. And there's many things that the community college does, but like if we could get back to that at City College and in celebrating those kind of things, it's like, there are oftentimes great jobs in service of your community in critical areas. And it doesn't mean that everyone has to be a police officer. If that's not your focus, you don't have to be. But there's great ways to give back on mental health or drug treatment. And we sort of, it seems like, lost our way in supplying those folks. And especially when City College has gone from like 100,000 students to 26,000 students. Yeah. So to me, we just, in general, we have to be like, stay in your community, grow up in your community, give back to your community, and City College would be a great place to do it.
I love that sentiment and couldn't agree more. And think about it as well. Maybe to your point is you don't want to be a police officer. Maybe you don't want to be a mental health worker. Maybe you want to be in the building and construction trades. But we can also create apprenticeship programs in partnership with City College so we can have people who are born and raised here actually get associate's degrees and stay here, whatever career that they might want to choose. And so to me, it has to be a focus right now in San Francisco, and it has to be a focus from the next mayor. It's something we just haven't talked about right now. We've really lost our way in terms of staffing all of these different departments here in San Francisco, and it's something I couldn't be more excited to move forward.
So your other two priorities, second priority, you talked about the condition on city streets.
Yeah.
And obviously there's that condition, it relates to many things. It relates to homelessness crisis. It relates to fentanyl crisis. And currently, it's before the Supreme Court. They already had oral arguments about what is going to be the rules and what cities can do to clean up the streets. What could we be doing now, aside from what happens with the U.S. Supreme Court, aside what judges say, to actually take action now? If you were mayor today, instead of potentially after November, what would you do differently now, even given the legal climate?
Yeah, the same thing that I did when I was mayor in 2018. I understand the current stance out of City Hall. It's a very cautious stance, given the Ninth Circuit injunction. I have written opinions.
So if you would be less cautious, you'd be more aggressive with the powers of the city?
Exactly. Have written opinions from different law firms here in San Francisco that's saying we can still, despite the Ninth Circuit injunction, still use other laws at our disposal to actually remove tenant encampments off the streets of San Francisco. Look, from my perspective, and this gets to a style of leadership or a lack of leadership. Right now, you have a city hall that's being very cautious around this issue. I don't want to ruffle feathers. I don't want to get into trouble, what have you, because certain people believe that there might be a problem. At the same point in time, we're letting these tenant encampments, we're letting the homelessness proliferate on our streets. Homelessness is on the rise again. We just saw the stats from a week or two ago. To me, that's simply unacceptable. I would rather be a mayor that takes an honest and aggressive stance. We need to treat people, by the way, with compassion and respect. That doesn't happen right now in City Hall often. We need to offer shelter and housing. But if people say no, I believe we need to take their tents away. Because at the end of the day, nobody is getting better by sleeping in tents a night on our streets of San Francisco. The health issues that exist, the crime issues that exist between rape and arson and other issues doesn't get talked about enough. And to me, we are only helping people but when we're encouraging them to get into shelter and housing and discouraging them from continuing to sleep on our streets in tent encampments ad nauseum for as long as they wish because we're being permissive as a city. If somebody wants to sue me in my capacity as mayor because I chose that stance, they're welcome to do so.
No one's helping them by leaving there. It's not compassionate to say sleep on the streets.
It's not progressive to allow somebody to end up with open wounds in their tent encampments, subject to different types of crimes, where they're getting abused on the streets every single night and have to check in ER rooms every other week with necrosis and open wounds on their legs and arms. That to me is not compassionate. That's not progressive. That's not San Francisco. My North Star is about focusing on saving lives and helping improve the conditions of these individuals' lives. When we do that, at the same point in time, and if we're aggressive about it, getting them off the streets, we also clean up our neighborhoods. We support local families here in San Francisco. And also we relieve our police officers, our firefighters, our sheriffs from the time that they spend right now having to address these issues on the streets. It's an inordinate amount of time over the last 6 years where all of a sudden we have public safety officers having to intervene on the streets with these individuals. Let's get them the help that they need. Let's be aggressive about that. Get them off the streets. Connect them to services. Certainly with the drug crisis right now, the fentanyl crisis we have today, the unfortunate part is City Hall and our health department is taking the same approach that we did with heroin and meth 15 plus years ago. Literally every day handing out free packets of tinfoil and the tenderloin to those suffering from drug addiction.
Do you feel like this notion of housing first, which was very successfully implemented in Houston, but it's a very different climate in Houston because they have a housing surplus, not a housing shortage. So in San Francisco, it becomes a little bit more like housing way later because we don't have enough housing.
That's a great term.
Okay. Besides that part, do you think city government here missed the ball on this sort of trade-off between permanent housing and shelter? Because we didn't see that there was going to be these legal challenges. And a lot of these legal challenges from judges are based on, oh, you don't have enough shelter. You don't have enough places for people to go. And when we're sort of balancing, do we do permanent housing first or shelter-based or shelter first? We never considered that when we made that decision that, oh, this might make it more difficult later on to deal with some of the issues. Did city government miss that, a cost of sort of permanent housing at the expense of everything else?
That's a great question. And, look, when this was implemented in the 90s, it was academic policy based, and I think it makes a lot of sense, right? If I am homeless, or if I am, somehow not able to take care of myself financially or otherwise, the best outcome for me is to give me permanent, lifetime subsidized housing. Of course, that's the answer. That makes sense. But a lot to your point, and around this dialogue about housing first versus shelter first, the honest answer is we were never going to have enough public tax dollars and public subsidies to permanently house everybody that is homeless in San Francisco. It simply won't work. At the end of the day, we're building affordable units at close to $1 million a clip here in San Francisco. We're just not going to have the resources ever. And as generous as the voters of San Francisco have been around affordable housing, around housing for homeless, that's not reality. And that's why, exactly as you're talking about, and I am the only candidate running for office, running for mayor, who's talking about this right now. And it's shocking to me that 25 years plus later, you and I are the only ones talking about this, that we need to move from housing first to shelter first. Let's focus on getting people off the streets en masse, where they can actually start to make a change with their own lives, where they can actually start to get off the streets, get healthy once again, get connected to different services that they need, whether it's mental health, whether it's drug treatment services, whether it's job placement services. That's not happening when people are in tents on the streets of San Francisco right now.
Hey, it's Ben Kaplan here. Want to join our movement to get San Francisco back on track? Attend a We Town Hall event or stop by our popular We Happy Hour meetups. Better yet, join our data team, take the census, or help us audit the city budget. To join the movement, text us at 415-301-6700. That's 415-301-6700. Or learn more at wesanfrancisco.org.
To me, when you talk to people who are homeless or homeless families, it's like, imagine trying to make like a major change in your life in that kind of condition. I mean, anyone, no matter how strong you say your will is, it would be difficult for anyone. So in some ways, do we have to like get folks in a better situation? But we can't just stop there. We can't just say, okay, you got some shelter now we're done. But it's like, we have to get people in a better situation and then try to bring services that can help raise them up. But if you're addicted to fentanyl and you're high right now, you're probably not going to make a great life decision. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're Mark Farrell. You're not going to make a great decision, right? So we've got to get people in better circumstances where they can start to take the reins back of their lives.
I couldn't agree more. And that's why this is a complete overhaul about how we think about spending our capital, right, as a city government in this pocket in particular, right? The amount of money that we spend every year on kind of around this housing first model is vast. And we're helping some individuals to great effect long-term, right? And that's awesome. But at the end of the day, we have such a vast problem now with homelessness once again on the rise here in San Francisco and a lack of focus out of City Hall. To me, we need to move to this shelter first model, get the majority of people off the streets of our city, get them connected to these services you're talking about. And I bring it back all the time, Ben, as I think about being a parent in our city. First of all, lucky enough to have been raised here in San Francisco. My dad was an Air Force officer, so I grew up just outside the Presidio gates because we needed to use the Presidio as an Army base when I grew up. And he put himself through law school night on the GI Bill. Growing up in San Francisco was special. Right. And I see we've always had problems. We're a large city in the U.S. Nothing's ever been perfect, but it was different. And to me, as I think about the vast amount of families here in San Francisco that are experiencing homelessness, and to think about being a child growing up in the city as a father right now, to me, that's something we need to fight aggressively for out of City Hall. That is a very personal quest and something that I believe very, very strongly on, something we just don't talk about enough out of City Hall right now.
The second point of your video and your launch video, what struck me was you were sort of saying we need to make San Francisco a great place for families. That's not really talked about here that much. One, because it's famously a city that has more dogs or pet parents than kids, number one. But two, people sometimes think like when you talk about families, that sounds a little bit like family values, conservatives, Republicans, all of this. Do you feel like when you highlight that, you get pigeonholed like that? Because people think families is a sort of a dog whistle, even though most people would generally support families. Who's really opposed to a family? How do you feel like the response is for highlighting families?
That's been incredible, from parents across the city of San Francisco. And by the way, we have 3 children and a dog, so you can do it all at once, right? And I see your dog in the background here too. So we're all the same. Look, at the end of the day, to me, it's also, as I think about having been born and raised in San Francisco, the best part about this, I didn't realize until I left San Francisco, and moved to college down in Los Angeles. Being raised in the city means that you grow up with friends of every race and ethnicity and religious background, right? Ultimately sexual orientation as well. And it's simply part of life. Those are who your friends are.
It's a creative energy from that, right? You sort of feel like it's richer. You celebrate. I feel like San Francisco, it was cool to be weird before everyone else started trying to say like, we're weird too.
That's right.
We were weird first. And that was awesome.
That's awesome. And you know what? It's the diversity of our city that has always existed as part of our ethos. And part of raising children here is I love that they're growing up with that ethos as well. And so to me, that's not a left or right issue. That's just simply, a family issue and raising children. And that to me doesn't strike across political lines that, we have families in every single neighborhood in our city. And as I mentioned, the neighborhood with the most families in our city is the Tenderloin. And as we think about the issues that are plaguing that district and that neighborhood, from public safety to the drug crisis, that to me is why we need to be laser focused on these issues here in San Francisco, why the next mayor of San Francisco needs to make those issues a priority. It is for families to make sure that once again, as we're bleeding families out of our school district, we actually make this place that's reinvigorated by families once again and young children that adds to the diversity of our city. I believe in baby strollers, and seeing them in the neighborhoods. That adds to the diversity of our city. And to see kids, we are raising the next generation of native San Franciscans. And I believe in the value and the importance of that.
The mayor's power does not include direct power over the Board of Education.
Correct.
The city college district. It doesn't include that, but the mayor has a lot of the bully pulpit, soft powers to change focus. What would you do quickly just on those, even though you don't have direct control over it, to focus on education and maybe have an education first approach to what goes on in the city, where a lot of people feel like education in the city lacks where it should be, given that we're a world-class, innovative, leading city. It doesn't feel like our education system is like that.
I think it's right. And you know what? If we want San Francisco to be that iconic city in the world that we always have been, we need to focus on a great public education system here in our city. And it's true. We have a separately elected, I'll talk about the school board and not City College right now, separately elected school board that controls the policy and the budgets for our school district, where City Hall has been a little bit divorced from the school board simply because there is no authority over the school board and their decisions and their actions, if you will. But you know what? I want to be the first mayor in San Francisco history that is actually proactively focused on our public school families specifically. And I'll mention 3 ways in particular that I think the mayor and what the mayor can do that has never been talked about before and never been done before, despite these structural differences and the fact that we can't replace or step in the shoes of the school board itself. Number one of the 3 pillars of our public school system here in San Francisco is to focus on 3rd grade reading proficiency for our children. It's a marker for academic and, quite frankly, lifelong success in grammar school, high school, and beyond. So out of City Hall, though, we have a Department of Early Childhood that issues tens of millions of dollars a year around youth programs in San Francisco, but we've never had alignment around any of our school district priorities out of the Department of Early Childhood or proactive alignment. I will make it their first priority to fund programs focused on 3rd grade reading proficiency. So again, not stepping into the policy shoes of their school board, but as mayor, we can fund programs that are in support of our public school families and our public school district to make sure that we support our kids to actually do as well as they can through the 3rd grade reading proficiency. So that's step 1. Number 2, we have never had a mayor that's been super proactive with our MTA and working with our school district in particular. 2 things here. 1, I believe we need to make free muni for youth permanent in San Francisco. It's been one of the longest serving pilot programs in our city. We need to do that. But then also we need to work on bus routes, but in particular frequency in the mornings of getting our kids in our public school families to
sometimes
schools.
Logistical issues get in the way of education, and it's silly, right? Because you think the focus should be on just learning, but no, it's particularly when we have a system where people might have to go to school across town, it just makes it difficult and it just gets in the way.
I mean, look, every parent will say the same thing. Getting your kids out of the house in the morning to go to school sometimes can be a challenge, right? And so you're a public school family. You get your child and you bring him or her to the bus stop, your kid or your kids to the bus stop to take the school bus or take the muni to school in the mornings. But then you're waiting there and you're going to be on time and all of a sudden a full bus drives by. What happens then? Now you're going to be late. Now your children are going to be late to school. There's a stigma attached with that. Post-COVID, truancy is a big deal where people are just simply skipping school. So to me, we need to actively focus out of City Hall, make sure our MTA supports our public school families in ways that's not been done, implemented, or even talked about today. And then the last part is around public safety. During COVID, our public school district cut ties with our police department. We used to have school resource officers in our schools. We don't anymore. Again, that's their policy decision. I may not agree with it, but that's life. And so what I've committed to is that as soon as I'm in office, we're going to create a priority 311 code. So any issues, public safety issues within a 1 block radius of our public schools is dealt with within 24 hours. So we make sure we have an environment where children are walking onto school grounds, excited to learn and not thinking about any type of street behavior they're encountering.
I'm curious about a cause that's a little bit close to my heart, and we haven't had much time to talk about it. So we'll hit it quickly, though, which is I grew up in family businesses. I've been around family businesses. To me, local businesses, small businesses, even kind of a family issue as well. What could we be doing differently now to make it easier? To your point earlier, sometimes a lot of small businesses I talk to, it feels like the city's working against them, not for them. And it also feels like San Francisco, maybe California as a whole, has a reputation for not being that business-friendly environment. We can debate that for the huge giant corporations or big tech, but like small businesses, these are individual people that are pillars of their community, their neighborhoods. What could we do quickly to change them, particularly when there's a lot of abandoned businesses, vacant storefronts? What could we do now that would be different?
I think there are a number of things. So first of all, I believe on focusing on public safety and street conditions are the number one issues that they care about right now in San Francisco. Every single commercial corridor that I go to, we did a merchant walk the other week, Outer Irving. So think about from 19th out to 26th Avenue, an amazing little commercial corridor here in San Francisco. I wish it wasn't the case. Everybody I walk into, and we chatted with the store owners across multiple blocks. I said, tell me about your issues. What's working, what's not? They just said public safety, public safety, public safety. It's the number one thing. They say they're having to close their stores early because people and residents don't want to come shop there or eat at their restaurants. A store owner had their catalytic converter stolen from underneath their car twice in a row and within 1 month. I mean, this type of stuff can't continue here in San Francisco if we're going to have thriving small business corridors. And then street conditions as well. Out in West Portal the other day, talking to different store owners, they said they have people defecating in front of their stores on the sidewalk 10, 11 o'clock in the morning on a bright sunny day. That can't be allowed to continue. That's not conducive to small businesses operating well here in our city. There's also tax issues we have to talk about. I've called from the beginning of my campaign, any small business making $5 million or less should be exempt from local business taxes. I believe that very strongly. It's a small, insignificant, not insignificant, but very small part of our city budget. To me, that is simply a nod to small businesses to say that City Hall is going to focus on you once again. But then also you think about all those vacant storefronts. We have not done enough as we think about our artist community and the nonprofit community on how we can actually once again reinvigorate those storefronts. We have a vacant to vibrant program that exists here in San Francisco and simply hasn't worked that well. We need to re-examine that. And to me, ultimately, it's about producing results. You know, one of the small business owners that I talked to earlier today, I mentioned before I came on your show, he said that he got a $800 bill for the city of San Francisco because he wanted to put 2 tables and 4 chairs in front of his store so people could sit down. $800. Why would we do that to a business owner? You know, let alone the 150-page informational pamphlet about a parklet in San Francisco that exists now. How much did it cost, A, to put that together on city staff time or outsourced attorneys? And why are we doing that to our small businesses? We need to make it as easy as possible to not only open but operate small businesses in our city. I couldn't agree with you more, because to me, more than anything, you talk about a lot of these are small family-run businesses. But more than that, to me, these are the small businesses I think about are along our commercial corridors here in San Francisco. And look, whether it's West Portal, Irving, Castro, Mission, Columbus, Chestnut, Union, you know, Leland and Viz Valley, it doesn't matter to me what neighborhood you like to spend your time. But to me, that's the heart and soul of our city, is our neighborhoods.
Sometimes people talk about the attitude of police. Are we warriors? Are we guardians? We want it to be guardians of community. For the city and small business, to me, it's like, are we regulators of small business or are we champions of small business? And for now, it's like, if you're going to open up a business, to me, that's like community service to your neighborhood. If you can open up a business, serve the neighbors, sustain it, and we should champion you. But I don't think, to me, it doesn't feel like, oh, San Francisco city government exists to champion small business. It doesn't feel like that. So it's almost just like a shift in just attitude and focus, because we need small businesses. And it's a lot easier to have hundreds or thousands of small businesses in than sometimes to get the big Macy's to come in one big shot. We focus a lot of time on that. We should, but these small businesses can make a difference.
100%. Again, they feed the vibrancy of our commercial corridors. They feed the vibrancy of our neighborhoods. To me, that's what San Francisco is simply all about. And I will tell you, I wish it wasn't the case. You talk to now merchants, heads of merchant groups along these commercial corridors, and they are articulating to me, why would a small business ever open up here in San Francisco right now? The city makes it so hard to do this. And to me, to your point, it needs to be a flip of the script, right? Let's be champions of small businesses. Let's, out of San Francisco, out of City Hall, be an organization and a government that is for our small businesses and work for them, as opposed to the other way around. Sit there and say, we're the regulators. You have to come to us. You have to convince us how to help you and why what we're doing to you is wrong. To me, let's be proactive in a different way. I also think about our planning department as it relates to people trying to do work on their own homes, right? You stick a permit into planning right now and they say, hey, it could be 2 months, could be 2 years. We don't know when we'll get back to you, when it gets to the top of my pile. That is inappropriate, right? That affects residents who live here right now, but it also affects developers who are coming to San Francisco, or used to come to San Francisco, who are going to build that next wave of housing that we need here in our city in a major way. So to me, we have to change how San Francisco government operates and the mentality of it.
What is something about Mark Farrell that would surprise people? A hobby, an interest, a passion, something you do with your spare time? What is something surprising people would not expect from you?
Let's see. My wife and I joked around about this the other night. Since I left office in 2018, I've coached 9 different sports teams for my kids. So I love coaching our kids.
Which sports?
Football, basketball, and baseball.
Okay. Yep. Big 3. Okay, yeah. Sure.
So it's been an amazing time. So I love doing that.
What do you do to just unwind for the campaign trail, or do you? What do you do when you just need to free your mind, get a fresh start? What is your go-to activity?
You know what people don't know about me also? Yeah. I love to cook.
Oh.
I'm a huge barbecue fan.
Okay.
So we do it as much as we can in the backyard. It takes a little bit more time sometimes than I have nowadays running for office. But my happy place around the house is in the kitchen, and I love doing it. I love doing it for our family, for friends. So when I need to unwind, it's actually time in the kitchen, time barbecuing outdoors. I love doing it.
Okay. Well, and where do you go? $20 or less, go-to spot. You're not going to cook. You're going to go someplace else. You're not going to spend a ton of money. Where do you have a go-to spot?
That's easy. Gordo's.
Okay.
100%. We were there last night with my kids. Yeah. Institution here in San Francisco, and certainly a family go-to all the time.
And you have out-of-town guests coming to visit. They maybe saw some of the headlines that says, oh, San Francisco, is everything okay there? You want to show them something different. Are there hidden gems? Where do you take the out-of-town guests? What is sort of maybe, not the Golden Gate Bridge, but other places one could go that you would recommend in the city?
I think our parks are our greatest asset, or one of our greatest assets here in the city. Maybe not Golden Gate Bridge, but think about the Presidio as a national park. I mean, what an amazing gem that we have here in San Francisco, and certainly the tunnel tops that just were built in that park itself. People that go there all the time right now, and we certainly take them there. But, one of the things I was most proud of when I was in office as a supervisor was actually creating and, buying, designing, raising the majority of the money for the building of a brand new park in the middle of Russian Hill, which is one of the densest parts of our city, Francisco Park. I mean, when I was started in office as a supervisor, 4.5 acres of concrete and chain link fence, a reservoir that hadn't been used in 70 years. And now look at it. It's a brand new park. It's a few years old at this point in time, and simply a gem for the neighborhood, but for visitors, for everybody in San Francisco. So I simply take people to our parks. To me, that's something that everyone can get excited about, and something that I simply love as part of our city.
If you were right now, you're going to have the mayoral powers back for a day. It's not the election yet, so it's going to be now. You're going to have it back for the day. You don't have to get board of supervisor sign off approval. You can do whatever you want, but you can't do huge, you can't like redo the entire budget in a day. So you can't do that. What would you do? But you have a day to focus on as mayor right now. It's the average Wednesday. What would you spend your time on?
The core issues I mentioned. Again, public safety, street conditions, and the economy. I mean, to me, I'm a policy wonk, and I believe in working incredibly hard in City Hall. Why I believe experience is going to matter more than anything for the next mayor of San Francisco is because it's going to take an intimate knowledge of the 50 plus mayoral departments that you're going to run. If we're going to turn this ship around as a city, if we're going to bring our city back, to me, you have to have knowledge of that. You have to be able to hit the ground running on day one and get after it. And again, just to end, as I mentioned in the beginning, I believe in San Francisco. I believe in everything that we have going for us. You know, we are an iconic city in the world. The beauty, the educational talent, the workforce, but more than anything, the people of San Francisco. We are incredible. But what we've been missing is leadership and strong leadership out of City Hall. We can bring our city back. It's just going to take that leadership in City Hall to change. And I look forward to bringing my vision to the city of San Francisco back to City Hall.
Is it going to take 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years? I get asked that all the time. Like, when are we going to be back?
Look, there are things, to be super clear and honest with all the voters of our city, there are things you can do in the very short term, right? Within the first year in office. New police chief, refocus funding within our police department, our public safety departments. Make sure we start lateral hiring in this drop program. Long-term staffing in our police department is going to take a little while, take a few years. I think about street conditions. We can have an immediate impact in the first year or two within our tent encampments, within the drug crisis on our streets. The economy is the thing that's going to take a little bit longer to lag. But at the end of the day, because I do believe the economy is going to be dependent upon public safety and street conditions being addressed, if you will, proactively. You know, people right now don't want to invest in the city of San Francisco, whether it be equity, as I'm looking at the skyline of San Francisco along the landscape here, whether it be equity or debt here in San Francisco, because they're not sure about the future of our city and our governments. When we actually start to show progress on these issues, people want to come back to San Francisco. And I believe that'll come back in droves. It takes a change of leadership. It takes a different vision. And when we do that, then we start to change the attitude of San Francisco residents across our city and start building up that civic pride, that notion of believing in San Francisco because we are the iconic city in the world we always have been. That to me is what's missing. I look forward to bringing that back.
Thank you so much for joining us on We Are San Francisco.
Thanks for having me, Ben.